Pro from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't like what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Outside in the warm Miami air, Winchell turned to me.
What was your name again, kid?
It's still Heller. Nathan S. Heller.
Aren't you gonna spell it?
Look, I don't want to be in your story.
Good, because you're not. You're Chicago, right?
Born and bred.
What do you make of that, in that cell back there?
You're New York. What do you make of it?
It's horseshit. I think that little bastard hit Cermak. I think he thinks he's dying from that stomach of his, and the mobsters probably promised to support his family back in Italy in return for him taking Tony out, and for his silence. What do you think?
I think you're right on the money. But if you print it, nobody will believe a word.
What's a guy to do? Bullshit they'll believe. Take it from me. Facts only bore 'em.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course, the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi. Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm, of course, Robcasting at you from right here in the Robservatory. You members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, you imagination connoisseurs are here for my 1076th show of Robservations, and as I like to say, the third time's the charm. That's right, we're finally going to do a show that was supposed to be done twice before, but didn't work out. Seems like the stream, it's always nice to be having a strong stream at my age, if you know what I'm saying, and I think you do. So I got to tell you, first a little errata, is that what you call it? Yesterday, I went to an event at USC, my old stomping grounds, and I went to the Ray Stark Theater with my friend Alvaro, and we went to a screening of Brian Fuller's debut feature. Brian Fuller, of course, got his start writing on Deep Space Nine and Voyager. He created Dead Like Me, Wonder Falls, Pushing Daisies, of course, Hannibal, which I still maintain is the greatest horror television series of all time. He co-created Voyager, Discovery. See, I can't even say it. It's hard for me to say. But, of course, all of that was, destroyed by other people. But anyway, he's one of my favorite people in the world. And as a creator, I think he's amazing. He, believe it or not, it took him this long to write and direct his first feature film. Many people that work in television that are showrunners do not get to do that. His film is called Dust Bunny, and it actually began life as an episode of the Apple revival of Amazing Stories that he was writing. He was able to get it back and turn it into a feature, and it stars Mads Mikkelsen and Sigourney Weaver and a newcomer, and I forget her name, Sophie, I forget her last name, but she's actually a Scottish actress. What a find. This movie is a darkly whimsical, gnarly fairy tale. It's R-rated. It has a lot. It owes a lot to Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro, like for City of Lost Children and Delicatessen, and of course even Amélie and Luc Besson's The Professional. It is a wonderfully realized vision that only Brian Fuller could have brought us. It is very much an auteurist vision, and I loved every minute of it. And I said in my Out of the Theater review, he shot it with a 3-to-1 aspect ratio, which is extreme and wild and interesting. The visuals on it are incredible, and it's like nothing you've seen. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. Now, here's the kicker. It is being released. The Lionsgate and Roadside Attractions are putting out, but it's only going to be in 500 theaters. This is a movie. I implore all of you. First of all, support Brian Fuller, support indie filmmaking, support auteurist visions, but go see this movie. It opens on the 12th. It opens the same weekend as Five Nights at Freddy's, so it's next week. Please, I implore all of you to go see it. And also, I can announce here, you probably already saw the show, Friday at 6 p.m., this Friday, Brian Fuller is coming back to the channel, and we are going to be on, I'm going to bring on Alvaro, who saw the movie as well, and we're going to grill Brian Fuller. He gave an incredible Q&A after the screening. Brian is just such a smart guy. He has such a keen mind and such a wonderful understanding of everything from writing to horror to, as he'll tell you, being queer and being a queer creator. And I can't get enough of listening to him talk about all of these things because he is so articulate and thoughtful. He truly is one of my favorite people in the world, and I can't wait to have him back on the channel. But please put Dust Bunny on your radar, and if you can go see it in the theater. It demands to be seen in the theater. The sound mix is beautiful. The score is beautiful. And the movie's quite like nothing you've ever seen before. And yet, if you're a fan of Pushing Daisies, the color palette, everything, they shot it in Budapest, but it seems like it takes place in a world you've never been to before. And in a way, I mean, it's got a John Wick element to it, kinda. It's wild, man, and it's really phenomenal. So I hope everybody goes and sees it. I think you're all going to be very happy. I don't understand. It's not even getting a theatrical release in the UK, according to Brian. I can't believe that. I think this movie would do really well in Europe. I think it would be beloved in the UK, beloved in France, beloved in Scandinavia, all over. It's definitely a European sensibility. It's got a European feel to it, and it's truly a timeless work. And look, I could wax rhapsodic about it even longer, but I won't. I'll save it all till Friday. Go see Dust Bunny. And no, Brian didn't pay me to say it, nor did he tell me to say it. I'm saying it. Look, if I didn't love the movie, I would have told Brian that, and I would have said, it's not as good as I hoped. It exceeded all of my expectations. So if you've read the reviews out of TIFF, I can't believe it's a problem that no one's heard of the film. That's a problem, and I hate that's a problem, and I hate it's only coming out on 500 screens, and I hate that they only, he told me a lot about how the marketing people are like, well, who is this movie for? I'm like, oh, I don't know, anybody who loves movies? How about that? Hollywood these days, really, no one really knows what they're doing. No one ever knew what they were doing, but people know less than ever before. Anyway, Dust Bunny, go see it. Now, I wanted to talk about this show since it started. We're 5 weeks into a 9-week season or 9-episode season of Vince Gilligan. Vince Gilligan was, of course, he created Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but I first was aware of Vince Gilligan's work on The X-Files. And I've talked a lot about on this show of what I like to call, I don't know if anyone else has ever used this phrase, I made it up, what I call the impossible premise show. And I think Lost was a great example of the impossible premise show. My beloved gobbledygook-filled Manifest, which, I mean, Manifest, after the first, they had a great banger pilot episode. I knew that I could tell you exactly what was going to happen in the last episode of Manifest. I told Elizabeth, I go, this show is ridiculous. They have no idea where they're going to go with this show. If you want to watch a perfect example of an impossible premise show, an impossible premise is they come up with a great idea for a pilot. It's so compelling, but they haven't thought it through. They don't know where it's going. They have no idea, and they're making it up as they go. And there's highbrow and lowbrow impossible premise shows. I think the very first impossible premise show, even though I love it, is The Prisoner. I think Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner. 17 episodes. And if you've ever seen The Prisoner, which if you haven't, what's wrong with you? It's one of the greatest TV shows ever made. But the end, they didn't know how to end it. And people have been puzzling over it since then, since the late 60s. And I would dare say, as much as I love The Prisoner, the end of it is hooey. It is hooey because they didn't know how. Patrick McGowan couldn't end it. He couldn't end it. And instead, he just gave you a bunch of gobbledygook that he hid behind. But that's when you're making TV, you never even know if your show's going to be on the air for an entire season. So no one's going to take time to figure out how a show is going to work 4, 5, 6 seasons now. And, the Netflix model is you get 3 seasons and you're done. I mean, I still want more Travelers. Come on, Eric McCormack. Designated Survivor, 3 seasons, and they bought it from NBC and did 1 more season for Netflix. I get it. But I've always dreamed, so another J.J. Abrams, the impossible premise goes hand in hand with the mystery box. They're hand in hand. The problem is a show becomes an impossible premise show when they don't have, it's like Schrodinger's cat. There's nothing in the mystery box. It's both there and not there. So they don't know how to end it. And it's very, very frustrating when you as a viewer invest your time. I think the most recent example of a show that, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, in the modern age, I think the X-Files, which debuted in 1993, I was a little Johnny-come-lately on the X-Files. I didn't start watching until after the first season aired, and I saw the first episode I saw was the Erlenmeyer Flask, which was the last episode of the first season. But I knew what was going on because, UFOs and alien autopsies and all that. I was like, holy shit, I missed out. So over the summer, I became obsessive about the X-Files. And as season 2 went on and season 3, that show was a brilliant combination of mystery box and monster of the week. So they had an overarching, the myth arc episodes, and then they had the monster of the week episodes, which I was down with. And Vince Gilligan, I don't think it was their first season. Forgive me if I'm wrong about this. I didn't research this, but I loved the X-Files. And I think the first 4 seasons, and I love the standalone episodes like Die Hand, Die Verletz, and of course people remember Home and Tombs and Squeeze. There were so many great episodes. Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, or Last Repose? Final Repose. So many great shows. So much great stuff in the X-Files. But the mythology was really, really, really interesting. And of course, X-Files is one of those modern day shows that did something really interesting. In the middle of its run, after season 5, the movie came out. X-Files Fight the Future came out. And I figured that we would get some answers. But it was clear with the movie that these motherfuckers, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know the answers. It was gobbledygook. Black oil and the goo and alien bounty hunters and the conspiracy. I thought that they had that shit mapped out. And then, of course, if you got the soundtrack album, there were 2 soundtrack albums for Fight the Future. There was Mark Snow's score, and then there was the music. And on the end of the, I think it was the music one, they had Chris Carter in this spoken word soliloquy. He explains the whole thing, and none of it made any sense. And I thought it was, as much as I thought Fight the Future was well made, gobbledygook. And I was really disappointed. And then, of course, as the show moved on, then they had to pivot and they got into extraterrestrial super soldiers or whatever the hell they got into. And, even with it didn't amount to anything because by their own admission, they didn't know where they were going. They had no idea. And I think the person that took this to heart most might have been Vince Gilligan. Because I think that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are, first of all, Breaking Bad is one of the great shows of all time. And they knew what they wanted to do. But even in the first season of that show, they were going to kill Jesse. But they realized Aaron Paul was so good and the chemistry was so good, they were able to pivot and make that work and give us one of the great duos in all of television history. That wasn't originally going to be the case. Jesse was going to die. But they realized what they had, but they still stayed on the course. And when you watch Breaking Bad, now I did not watch Breaking Bad until it had all aired. I'd seen like 1 or 2 episodes. I think I watched The Fly because people were talking about it. What I did was I bought the 50-gallon oil drum special edition of the series that came with the documentary and the making of the series. And I binged that shit. And I love crime. I love great crime stories. And I couldn't believe how good that show actually was. I couldn't believe it. I mean, there were things in there like when Gus Fring gets blown up and he comes. I'm still haunted by that. And he looks at the camera. He's like, unbelievable. That show is just full of such goodness. And that was a show, to me, to my mind, it shows how great serialized storytelling can be on television. And some of my favorite serialized storytelling, like Babylon 5, was deeply compromised because they never knew if they were going to be able to get a full season or what was going to happen. And halfway through season 3, I mean, Zaha Doom and going to the Shadow War, man, I was fucking riveted by that shit. And it's still really good. And J. Michael Straczynski, I mean, what is it? Was it Sleeping in Light? Was that the last episode of the show? But they actually filmed it. Was it during the 4th season? But they didn't air it until the last episode of the 5th season. They were thinking, but they were compromised by the network. It would have been nice if Straczynski knew that he was going to get a full-on 5 seasons from the beginning, because I do think the 5th season, they had to wrap up the Shadow War. They could have strung that out. But both Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5 gave me science fiction shows that I felt, I mean, Deep Space Nine was all over the place. I mean, season 1, 2, and 3 sort of gave us a new premise every year, but they were leading into the Dominion War. They didn't know where it was going to go, but seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Deep Space Nine are, even if it wasn't a Star Trek show and everything was made up like Babylon 5, it would have been an incredible show. So I've been a fan of all this kind of thing, fan of Vince Gilligan's, and the lead up to Pluribus has been a lot of fun. I think, now, if you haven't watched Pluribus, if you look online, you can see how many videos, a lot of them AI generated, I know, but there's a lot of other people making videos about what's going on. And I don't think I've seen an audience engaged as much with a genre show, at least in terms of editorializing, since WandaVision. Mephisto's gonna show up. I mean, I remember I loved WandaVision. It was so out there at first, outre, and it was so much fun to watch. And what was fun is, even on the John Campea show, we were speculating every week and looking at everyone's theory videos and all this. And to me, it's always funny because the shows are already made. So whatever crazy theories we're coming up with, they already know. I mean, in the streaming world, we're getting these. It's not like when they were making shows when they were still in production during a season. But still, it's so much fun that we don't know. And Pluribus, as someone who is I'm a snobby science fiction fan. Even though I can watch Star Crash or Message from Space and love them, I really do like my erudite science fiction. And we get so little of it on TV. It started to change. I thought the 3rd season of Foundation was incredible. And Apple TV has been bringing us, well, I'll get into the article I want to read, but we're getting some very highbrow science fiction. I dare say, in terms of an embarrassment of riches, we're getting more great science fiction television than maybe ever before in the history of the medium of television. And it's really, really exciting. And Pluribus is incredibly exciting. And I am loving every episode because the thought put into this show and where it's going is so well thought out. And if you go back and you watch the episodes, all I can say is milk trucks. They knew where they were going. They knew what they were doing. And like all great mystery shows, you can go back and see more and more detail. And it's incredibly accessible. And Pluribus does what I think all great genre material does, or really any great drama. It allows you, as a member of the audience, to wonder, if I were Carol, the protagonist, what would I do? And that's the great part of that show is you're with that protagonist, even though she's not particularly likable. But you're with her, and you're constantly asking yourself, would I do that? Would I do what Carol's doing? And I think all the great dramas or all the great entertainments that we have, whether it's movies or TV, there is an element that they make you empathize with the main character. Sometimes the main character is very distancing. You don't relate to them. Like, I like watching movies. I don't relate to Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. So I can sit back and I can just enjoy watching our crazy anti-hero do what he does. But I really also, and there's a lot of movies like that where I'm just letting the story, like I'm not the Man with No Name. And I'm not watching the Man with No Name trilogy with myself in the protagonist's point of, because I would never be that protagonist. So I can just sit back and enjoy it for what it is. But I also love shows like Pluribus or like Jaws. You know, I empathize with Brody. Would I go out on that old barge with going after that mean old shark? I don't know. I ain't going, Mr. Quint. If you know those deleted scenes, and if you haven't seen those, you need to see them. Greatest deleted scenes of all time, in my opinion. But to empathize with a character, because you think you're looking at that character, and when they do something you're not doing, you wonder about the results. What are the implications or the ramifications of what's happening? I love those kinds of shows, and Pluribus is that kind of show. And part of the reason is you're trying to figure shit out, like what's going on. You're thinking about all the implications about what has happened. So I wanted to start. I found a pretty great article. Once again, I'm dipping back into Medium subsection Fanfare had a great article, and it's by Patrick Anderson Jr. And let me jump into it. I want to read it. I think it's great. Apple TV's Pluribus and the American Fear of Losing Yourself. And this is, of course, Patrick Anderson Jr. And would a hive mind scare everyone? Well, let's jump into this. I want to say, if you have not seen Pluribus, I implore you, come back later after you've seen it, because this is going to be a spoilerific show. And I don't want to ruin the joys of Pluribus for anybody else, because it truly is a wonderful show that is thought-provoking, and you won't stop thinking about it. I'm just saying. So you have been warned. Here we go. In recent years, Apple TV has emerged as one of the go-to homes for great sci-fi television, with shows like Severance, Silo, and For All Mankind sitting next to its new show, Pluribus. Created by Vince Gilligan, Pluribus follows romance novelist Carol Sturka, one of only a handful of people who stay themselves after an alien virus turns the rest of humanity into a relentlessly cheerful hive mind. Now, one of the things I want to point out here, humanity had a choice. This virus, we created it. All that was sent to us was a blueprint a la Contact. And somebody recognized, an astronomer recognized this not as a signal, but as an RNA sequence. And so our scientists decided to recreate this RNA as a lab experiment. And they were experimenting on animals, and it escaped, as these things do. And it rapidly infected a small group of people, and that small group of people facilitated that the entire Earth was being taken over. And what this does is it turns everybody into part of this hive mind. except a few people. 13 people, I think, total. And they're very cheerful. And all they want to do is they want to protect the world. They don't want to, no harm to animals, no harm to plants, no harm to anybody. But I'll go on. Pluribus comes with a certain level of expectation if, like me, you're a fan of Gilligan's other works, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. The show didn't hook me in the same way Walter White did, standing in the middle of the desert in his underwear holding a very large gun. But I did get hooked, particularly during the hospital sequence in Pluribus's pilot, when the hive mind premise stops being abstract and lands on one terrified protagonist. Pluribus's Carol watches one night as everyone around her, including her partner Helen, falls into an inexplicable fit of convulsions before freezing in place. Then, as Carol is trying to get Helen to the hospital, she watches every person around her suddenly come back to life. There's destruction around them, a byproduct of almost all of Earth's population coming to an abrupt halt. Some of the affected don't make it, and nobody knows why. But the ones who do, they look fine now. Except they're all looking at Carol. Doctors, nurses, staff, all with the same eerie kindness. They're gentle. They're patient. They're completely synced, and every one of them seems to know intimate details about her that they shouldn't. The image of standing in a room full of people and realizing they and the entire world know everything about you, your search history, your group chats, the stuff you never said out loud, hits right at the center of some of my biggest individual fears. I'm reserved when it comes to my day-to-day life. Overall, I like to choose exactly when and how much of that life I'd like to share. This tendency is shaped by a lot of things, namely being black in America. This is, of course, the author of this article. And growing up with the sense that there are parts of myself I should keep back for safety, for sanity, for survival. Watching Carol, a queer woman and best-selling non-queer romantic author who's had to carefully manage how much of herself she gives to her audience and how much she keeps, I recognize that instinct to hold some pieces off limits. So when the hive mind in Pluribus starts circling Carol like a concerned friend who just wants to help, the stark fear in Carol's eyes was familiar. I felt the pressure, like someone prying her fingers off her own life, one by one, all while telling her it's for her own good. Because I was raised in the U.S., where we're fed stories about the lone individual making it all on their own, superhero movies, rags to riches, biopics, bootstraps commercials, Pluribus doesn't feel like a utopia. It feels like a hostage situation. The worst version of every social script U.S. history has warned us against. The show is clearly designed to make viewers like me squirm. People who treat agency and privacy like they're as necessary as oxygen. From our vantage point, a hive mind isn't just a sci-fi threat. It's a direct attack on the belief system that's been installed in our core fundamental ideas about what it means to be a person. But watching this show, I've also been wondering how much of my reaction is distinctly American. The Nightmare perspective feels calibrated for Western, especially American viewers, who worship individuality and personal freedom. For someone raised in a place where collective identity, state power, and enforced unity are baked into daily life, would these same scenes be received in a completely different way? Maybe more familiar or exaggerated or even tempting. The possible gap in that reaction, the distance between my horror and what someone else might see when they watch the show, is the essence of why I think Pluribus is one of the most broadly relatable TV shows I've seen in recent history. Playing as an American nightmare about losing the self, Pluribus also doubles as a worldwide Rorschach test. What you see in this hive mind depends on the we and I you grew up with. Whether you're watching on a couch in Miami, a crowded subway in Seoul, or an apartment in Berlin. Perception is relative. Pluribus plays like a horror story about losing the self for someone raised on American myths of individuality, but I wonder how it lands for people whose normal already leans more toward the collective. Out of the entire planet, only 13 people in Pluribus don't get pulled into this thing. Carol is one of those 13, and from the jump, the show makes it clear that she can't stand any of this shit, even when it quickly becomes clear the hive mind has no intention of harming her. For now. This is how the hive mind works, and what makes the show so unsettling. One day, scientists pick up an extraterrestrial signal embedded with an RNA code. They decode it, synthesize it in a lab, and test it on rats, one of which bites a scientist who becomes patient zero. Once the virus spreads, though, it doesn't just make people sick, it sinks them. Thoughts, memories, feelings, all linked up into one shared consciousness that talks through individual bodies. The hive is also relentlessly cheerful, soothing, and impossible to argue with. It knows who you are. It knows what you've done. It knows what you love and what you're afraid of. It also has an innate need to pull others into the fold. When it looks at Carol, it doesn't see a person with rights and boundaries. It sees a glitch that needs to be fixed. Carol Sturka, this grumpy, burnt-out romance author who's already half checked out of her own life by the time any of this starts, suddenly becomes the world's favorite rehab project. Tonally, the show feels like Vince Gilligan. Ordinary people stuck in a reality that keeps getting stranger and more dangerous by the minute. There's an underlying jokey atmosphere, but it isn't a comforting one. The hive is polite, the visuals are bright, nobody's drooling or stumbling around like a zombie. What you feel instead is this slow pressure building on Carol from all sides as the world around her leans in, each body holding the exact same smile and the exact same offer to keep her comfortable. Critics have already started calling Pluribus both high-concept sci-fi and a character study about autonomy and emotional coercion. As one writer at The Cut puts it, Pluribus feels designed for philosophical interpretation in a way that doesn't come along often on our small screens. In Pluribus, Gilligan builds a world where enforced happiness feels scarier than any zombie horde, especially if you grew up being told that happiness only counts if you choose it yourself. One of the main reasons Pluribus works on me so far is Rhea Seehorn. Carol is a tough character to play on paper, depressed, angry, burnt out, and stubborn in ways that could easily turn an audience off. Seehorn keeps her grounded, though. She doesn't oversell the sarcasm or the misery. She plays Carol like someone who's tired down to the bone, but still paying close attention, which makes every one of her reactions matter. When Carol flinches or snaps at the hive's cheerfulness, it feels real. And because the show rarely leaves her point of view for long, we end up seeing the hive almost entirely through the eyes of someone who wants nothing to do with it, which pushes us to take her side even when the hive starts to sound on the surface like it's truly trying to end human suffering. The way the show looks and feels backs this up. The post-virus world isn't gray or ruined. It's organized and creepily calm. The people under the hive's control are relaxed, smiling, helpful, often moving through broad daylight in clean hospitals and quiet homes. Visually, it's not the end of the world as we're used to seeing, though it's clearly the end of the world as we know it. The hive never yells or loses control. It's like talking to a customer service rep who has access to your entire inner life. Or an AI assistant. That calm tone makes the situation feel almost worse than a zombie's approaching groan because resistance starts to feel irrational. Carol's not just saying no to a threat. She's saying no to something that presents itself as perfect existence. As Lucy Mangan notes in her Guardian review, "We just want to help, Carol," is the increasingly sinister refrain. The pacing across the first few episodes also works in the show's favor. Episode 1 lays out the rules and lands the bar and hospital shock that tells us exactly how bad this is. Episode 2 leans into negotiation. The hive makes offers, shows concern, and stays so reasonable that Carol starts to look like the one with the problem. As Deepo Priya Duda puts it, in a slash film breakdown of the episode, this tendency to bend over backwards and fulfill Carol's every whim makes it clear that the hive mind wants to make her happy no matter the cost. Episode 3 starts poking holes in the hive's pitch and shows us what it can't fully control, along with the first signs of what it fears. By episode 4, it's clear we're not in the setup portion of the show anymore. The hive's reach feels bigger, more organized, and the space for someone like Carol to keep living on her own terms gets even smaller. At this point, I'd recommend Pluribus to anyone who likes character-driven science fiction. But the more I watch, the less I'm interested in debating whether it's a good TV show, and the more I'm stuck on the philosophy behind the narrative. What's it telling us about the stories we've been taught to tell ourselves about freedom and agency? E pluribus unum, out of many, one, is the U.S. motto stamped on our money, the phrase we grew up seeing on coins without ever thinking about it. It's been so ubiquitous in my life that I had to look up the meaning when I first started the show. I immediately saw why the title fit. Pluribus imagines what happens when the American promise gets twisted, when the one stops being a societal ideal and turns into a single, smothering consciousness that decides what everyone should think and feel. From kindergarten on, the message in the States is the same. Stand out and chase your dreams. It's on classroom posters and guidance counselor talks, in every follow your passion assembly. We celebrate the lone genius, the self-made success story, the person who doesn't care what anybody thinks, even when we're obviously shaped by the systems around us: school, work, race, money. We still like to pretend that our inner life is this separate, untouched thing that only belongs to us. That's the one part of our stories where we're supposed to have full control. Myself. In that context, the hive mind in Pluribus doesn't just read as a threat to Carol's safety, it reads as a threat to the one thing American culture keeps telling us we own outright: our private thoughts. The hive doesn't kill you or imprison you. It cracks open your head and files you into a spot within the overarching we. It knows your name, your past, your weak spots. When it talks to Carol, it doesn't come at her like a villain. It comes to her like a system that knows it's superior and believes it understands her better than she understands herself. That's part of why these hospital and bar scenes were so off-putting. They're not just creepy in a basic sci-fi way. They feel like a spiritual doxing, the worst-case version of what happens when who you are becomes public property. On paper, we're all about freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to live how you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. In practice, though, we're surrounded by systems that are constantly nudging us towards certain moods and beliefs. Algorithms shove recommended content at us. Covert ads tell us who we should want to be, while politicians and pundits frame our anger or fear in very specific ways to get very specific responses. At the same time, there's a social script that says you should be positive and feel grateful, resilient, blessed to be alive. Don't kill the vibe. The hive mind in Pluribus feels like a literal version of all that. It's a system that insists it only wants what's best for you, that it can take away your suffering if you just give in. It doesn't scream at Carol or torture her. It just keeps presenting itself as the reasonable option, the mature choice. And when she refuses, the hive treats that refusal as a problem to solve, not a boundary to respect. For an American viewer like me, that's a threat to our general way of life. It goes beyond an alien takeover, becoming a nightmare allegory about how much of our culture tries to shape how we feel and what we think through performance reviews and social feeds and even church sermons, all while pretending we're still free agents. In that sense, Carol isn't just fighting aliens. She's fighting the ugliest version of the scary stories I was raised on. Stories that reinforced notions of individuality and choice. Stories where the heroes are, emotionally at least, just like Carol, sitting in that hospital room, refusing to smile back. In a country with a motto like, out of many, one, Pluribus flips the slogan and asks who you are really, and if that one refuses to take no for an answer. I thought that was a pretty good article. It was definitely quick, but I liked it. I mean, I thought it was a great overview of what the show has to say, hence me sharing it. One of my great fears is the loss of civility. And maybe that was born out of the fact that watching dystopian science fiction movies everything from the Planet of the Apes, the original Planet of the Apes movies, A Boy and His Dog, how people, the Mad Max movies, how one human being treats another human being on the wasteland. Home invasion movies have always scared me. Movies like The Strangers freak me the fuck out. That's my worst fear, is that civility ends, which means human life becomes cheap. One of the things that was so horrifying in October 7th in Israel is that the Israelis, you had thousands of Palestinians coming in from Gaza working in Israel. And the Gazans were availing themselves of they went to the hospital. The Israelis were very generous. They were paying Gazans to come in and work for them. And these kibbutzes, that a kibbutz is basically a collectivist place to live where you have multiple groups of people, multiple families, all living together, and they're farming, and they collectively are building a life together. Those kibbutzes frequently had people from Gaza come in and work for them, and everybody trusted those people. And on October 7th, the ultimate example of what I fear most in my life, that these people that we were being civil to, or that the people on kibbutzes were being civil to, came in and destroyed those very same people that were trying to be nice, that were actually the ones that believed in a bucolic way of life and collectivist living, were slaughtered in the most unimaginable ways possible. And to me, that was one of the great realizations of my worst fears. And the fact that I'm Jewish made it doubly bad, because my entire life, there has always been a simmering of, look, to be Jewish, I would imagine, to be black, I don't know if it's the same thing, but you're constantly aware that a lot of the world hates you. And it's not just because, I do believe there's a Holocaust industry that needs to end, but to know that, to grow up, I don't look Jewish, so I've had my fair share of having to listen to conversations, hideous conversations, the most anti-Semitic shit ever. And people didn't know I was Jewish. I let them find out on their own. I was probably cowardly by not telling the people that I've been in these situations with. And it started out when I was very young, and what do you say? And I've always thought you kind of have to come to grips with the fact that, why do people hate you? And now this is the most anti-Semitic time I've ever lived through. And unlike, say, I do feel there's a hive mind that is being created, not unlike Pluribus. I've watched it spread over the last 2 years. And it used to be, it's everywhere. It's all over the world. And there are people that, given a choice, would want to eliminate all of us. And it's been something that I've been aware of my entire life. And it's a weird thing to say, but it's there. And I would say that in my life since October 7th, every single day of my life, I am no longer at DEFCON 5. I would say I now exist at DEFCON 3.5. DEFCON 1 would be life-ending threat. But I never expected to be there. But I'm there. You see it every single day. And it's been fomented, and it has been engineered, just like that RNA virus, and it's been cranked up to 11 by bad actors around the world. And I don't blame anyone for succumbing to this. I don't. But it's scary to watch it happen. And it's scary that other things in the world, people like what's going on in Sudan, no one seems to care there. But it's really interesting to see. So my idea, my great fear of the loss of civility, why did you do this? Because you were home. We've seen that play out. And this show freaks me out. All these kinds of things. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In Invasion of the Body Snatchers, your body was literally replaced. And I love the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I love Philip Kaufman's 78 Invasion of the Body Snatchers is one of my favorite science fiction films. Abel Ferrara's version I enjoyed that as well. Where are you going to go when there's no one left like you? Meg Tilly, unforgettable. Invasion, or The Invasion with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig, not so great. Not so great, but that's okay. That story is timeless, and I think that there's something about losing your identity, but in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, your original body is destroyed. So you know you're gone. You are being killed and replaced. In Pluribus, your body is still there. It's very interesting. One of the women in the show, one of the 13 people that is, for whatever reason, that was immune to this, is an Indian woman, and her son, she still has a relationship with her son who is part of the collective. Now, the son can still act like the son, can access his memories, but make no mistake, this is a hive mind. There are no individuals left. All of everyone's thoughts are now now all part of this hive mind, and everybody is just kind of a functionary of this hive mind. And if you read certain theories, if you watch the show, you'll notice details on it, like we've seen a couple of children, but where are the children? Where are the pets? And they don't hurt people. And a lot has been made of the last episode, this shocking revelation that this elixir that everyone's drinking, it seems to be, the smart money, I guess, is on the fact that like we render dead animals, when there's roadkill, we take that roadkill and it is rendered. A lot of the time it is turned into something usable. Not necessarily food, I hope not, depending on how long it was sitting in the sun or something, but material from a dead body, bone material, skin, flesh, it can all be used. And the hive mind, as monstrous, it's not like in Soylent Green, when people find out that people are encouraged to kill themselves and that they're taking the dead bodies and turning it into food, and you're actually eating a product made of flesh. But in the case of the collective, human bodies are just tendrils. They're essentially empty. The hive mind can jump from body to body to body. You're accessing the mind, but each ambulatory human body is there to do work or whatever. So the fact that if 800 million people died, we see them collecting bodies from the very first episode, the second episode really, and you see that they're putting them into these trucks that have the milk on the side of them, even though they're all over the world. They're processing this elixir and turning it into a nutrient. And why not? You've got almost 1 billion dead bodies lying around, and rather than allow them to succumb to putrefaction, they're scooping them up and they're rendering them. They're probably taking apart the bodies piece by piece, however they're doing it, and making it into an elixir. So there's no problem. You won't get prion-based illnesses or whatever. Now, it's monstrous, but for a hive mind that's more like a computer program or whatever else, it's just being efficient. And it's solving a lot of problems. So I can understand that. To me, however, I think that's too easy of an explanation. People talk about where are the pets and where are all the children. You don't see a lot of children when they call up people to fill up the local sprouts. There aren't children amongst those people. You've seen, I think, one in the hospital, and you've got one of our main character, they preserved her son. Not Carol, but another one of the 13 people that are immune. They kept that woman's son because they knew she needed that. But where are all the other children? And I've heard a great theory that, like the story that Strange New Worlds unapologetically ripped off Ursula K. Le Guin's Those Who Walk Away from Omelis, maybe the children. Where is this hive mind centralized? It wouldn't surprise me if we get to see the shocking revelation at the end of the season, as we see millions of children in some kind of giant facility, and that's where the hive mind resides, because the minds of children are more easily susceptible. There's more connections. Who knows? Now, would that be monstrous if the children aren't in any pain? But if you saw a collective, I can't even imagine, but millions of kids, and they're just sitting there lined up. I mean, this show is going to get more and more and more monstrous, but it's going to get monstrous in a way that we understand, and it's going to be monstrous in a way that people aren't getting hurt. And what it's going to constantly do is make us, as the audience, challenge our own beliefs about morality, about ethics, about our beliefs, whether they're religious or whatever. And that's why this show does what great science fiction does. is it is a genre of ideas. It's not about laser blasters, and it's not about the Force, and it's not about warp speed. Great science fiction is about the ideas behind existence itself. What makes life worth living? Now, one of my favorite books, a book I've dreamed of turning into a movie, is written by a Canadian science fiction writer named Robert Charles Wilson. It's called The Harvest. I read the book back in 1993. I have multiple copies of it. I even read a screenplay of The Harvest once that was fucking god-awful. But The Harvest has many similar ideas. The story is very different, but the core ideas are relatively similar, and I would recommend it. It's a great book, terrific book. I really loved it, but it's very accessible. It's as if Stephen King wrote a hard sci-fi novel. That's why I love Robert Charles Wilson. He has really big ideas, but he keeps them relatively grounded on a lot of his best books. But that's what I love about The Harvest. I mean, that's what I love about Pluribus, is that it makes me, I have conversations with people. My friend Alvaro, we talk about it. We can't wait to see it. I watch these theory videos and learn things I hadn't thought about. I love the fact that people are engaged. The great thing about science fiction when I was growing up is it was asking me questions about the larger world that I even had yet to get into, but I was contemplating these ideas. Twilight Zone, Star Trek, even in a funny episode like A Piece of the Action, at the end of the episode, when the question is asked, when McCoy says, I think I left my communicator in Bella Oxmix's office, and Kirk jokes at the end, well, maybe they'll show up one day wanting a piece of our action. And it's done as a humorous moment, but when you have an imitative species like the Sigma Iotans, and they're able to recreate your technology, and they do show up, what happens if they don't believe what you believe, and they don't think that you should be nice to one another? And if they do exert Chicago mobs of the 20s powers over you in the 23rd century, things could get ugly. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about science fiction stories. That's one of the things I love about one of my favorite books ever is Peter Watts's Blind Sight. What it asks about intelligence and consciousness. What if intelligence and consciousness don't go together? I mean, that's one of the great things about this particular show, is it's decidedly simple if you just want to watch the plight of Carol Sturka and see what happens to her, or if you really start rolling the ramifications around in your mind. Like, when we understand, probably in this week's episode, maybe they'll answer the question of what's up with this milk that isn't really milk. We're going to have to ask ourselves as viewers, do we understand why it's been done? Let's just assume for a moment that it is, like Soylent Green, it is people. Well, they're not killing anybody. They're taking or maybe they are, but I don't think they are, because that's part of their thing, is they just don't kill anything. They don't kill animals. They don't kill human beings. But one thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing is what this group, what this alien hive mind has already done. What they have killed is the individual. And so it's one thing, they can say, okay, everybody's still alive. Well, then the question is, well, what is human life supposed to be? If our individuality is stripped away from us and our inner lives are removed, someone else imposed that. Like, humanity didn't have a choice. So there are morals and ethical principles. There are quandaries about human life that this hive, and they brought it up in the show. Nobody asked if humanity wanted to do this. And indeed, it was an accident. So I've often pondered, since I've watched this show, what if this wasn't supposed to happen? That it wasn't supposed to happen like this? That we were not supposed to be totally infected? And that, in a way, I always used to think that the Borg from Star Trek, one of the things before they ruined the Borg and made them more human and had to give them a queen and all this bullshit, was what if you had an intelligent civilization that tried to improve themselves through technology, and there was somebody, it escaped the techno virus, the technomage virus from that Cable has in X-Men. What if this thing just escaped, and it was it just turned everybody into drones, and there was one hive mind. As soon as they gave, I mean, the idea that they needed Locutus to speak to humanity, I liked it better when the idea was like the Borg was just a plague. It was this techno virus that would sweep over a civilization, and it would just consume it. And there was nothing you could do. Once you gave it a face, then you sort of made the Borg sort of a little less special. But in this case, we don't know. We don't know where this virus came from. I think a lot of the people in their theory videos are saying that, hey, this was intentional. Obviously, this was being beamed to us for 600 years or from 600 light years away. So we were supposed to do something. But what if it wasn't supposed to be like the entire planet? It wasn't supposed to happen to the entire planet. It was a mistake. You know, they didn't come right out and give us say, hey, this is a thing. They allowed us to figure it out on our own. I don't know. There's a lot of questions I have about the initial RNA virus. That's why I love Pluribus. But I know one thing. You know who knows the answers to all of this? Vince fucking Gilligan. He's not making this shit up as he goes. He knows exactly where he's taking us. And you can tell. And if you think about mystery box storytelling in the things like, look, as much as I enjoyed Lost, the last season of Lost is one of the great betrayals of all time because, you're right, it is purgatory. I mean, I was so into Lost, especially after the second season. I love the first season. The second season was little because Lost would parcel out answers to these questions in little tiny, because they didn't fucking know. Vince Gilligan is giving you a shattering climax after every single episode. Every single episode of this show is giving you revelatory information. They fucking know. And the great thing about watching this show is what I love is real authorship. One of the great things about entertainment, great entertainment, yeah, you can have escapist entertainment. I love my escapist entertainment. I do. But when I'm getting something where I feel real authorship, something that is making me think about my own life and what it would be to be Carol. What would it be to be like her? How would I react? What would I think? Would I give in? I mean, she can't give in. They don't know why she's cut off from the hive mind. What would I do? Would I get Air Force One and gallivant around the cosmos? I mean, I also have to come to grips with the idea that probably the first thing I would do is go into the lobby of Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' space company, and I'd steal the model of the Enterprise from Star Trek The Motion Picture. And the fact that that's the first thing that comes to my mind to do that, that's kind of fucked up. But that's what I would do, probably. And then I would go find the place that had the best home theater I could find and sit around and watch all my discs. And I would probably go around all these used bookstores, steal all the first editions of science fiction novels. Because what else are you going to do? It wouldn't be fun to travel to cities and go see all these sites when you can't see the people from those cities. Or maybe I would take Air Force One and go from city to city and have them hook me up with all these people that actually lived in these cities. I'd go to Tokyo, hang out, go to all the stores, get a bunch of Gundam model kits. I don't know. Because if there's nobody else around, my favorite thing is other people. But if they weren't around, what would you do? I don't know. I love this show. I think it represents the very best of what television entertainment and streaming entertainment can be. I think it's 3 in a row for Vince Gilligan and his crew, and I love what's happening here. And with all the other things in the world, I mean, this show presupposes that we, the viewing audience, are smart. And that's what I like. I like the fact that creators think we're smart. And I like it when creators are also smart and they know exactly what they're doing. They've thought this through. They know. Vince Gilligan talked about how he thought about this for a long time. He's been thinking about this for a long time. And it shows. And, it makes me realize, now I know I had to say this, but how I wish that thought like this was being put into shows like Star Trek or Star Wars. Tony Gilroy and his team you might not, and or might not have been your jam, but you can't deny that the thought and consideration, because Tony Gilroy had been thinking about rebellions and uprisings, he'll tell you himself, his whole life. He brought all the research and all the stuff, he brought it to bear on a show in the Star Wars universe. And it was spectacular. Now, I'm not saying I want a show that's anything like Pluribus in the Star Trek universe, but I want a show that's set in the Star Trek universe that has this much thought put behind it. And that's not something we've been getting in the 21st century. Well, at least not since the end of season 4, when Manny Coto really delved into how the Star Trek universe became the way it became. And that's what I want. And so that's what I'm getting from this. And it is a joy as an audience member to be getting something in one of my favorite genres, which is science fiction, that is so beautifully done. And it's what all of us want from our various entertainments. And it doesn't matter what genre you're in, whether it's comedy, whether it's, I mean, you know, you had writers like Billy Wilder making movies like Some Like It Hot. And those movies were great because those people really understood humor. You know, Joseph Mankiewicz making All About Eve. I love All About Eve is because it's so smart. And Joseph Mankiewicz was an incredible screenwriter. And you watch these movies, and Sunset Boulevard, these movies were so good because everybody making them were so fucking smart and learned, and they were people of letters and people of the arts and people that were highly educated. We don't have a lot of that these days. So when we get something created by somebody and a team of people that have thought this through, I'd say that's winning. Anyway, let's see what you guys have to say. First of all, I'd love to, what is your thoughts about Pluribus? Go down in the comments section and please tell me what you think. Really like to know. And one of the things I do like about the comments section of what you guys have to say is there's a lot of great commentary from all you out there. Let's see. Royston Bailey says, in both communism and fascism, one is just a cog. It's true. I mean, look, I think one of the things about we're seeing people, the rise of collectivism, the rise of communism, or the rise of people enjoying those things, even though they don't work. They never will work because human beings are always going to have an individual impulse. The impulse to be a sovereign individual is too strong. And once you buy into a socialist system or a communist system, when the individual rears its ugly head, and they always will, the system itself has to shut that down. And it will eventually always lead to anger and violence. And yet you're still going to hear people go, no, but you haven't done it right. Every human being wants to be somewhere deep down inside an individual. And communism and socialism and collectivism, that's not saying you can't have certain socialist things within a system that allows for the individual to triumph, but ultimately it doesn't always work. And also, it's hard to be an individual, and it's much easier to let the collective group take care of you. I don't want that at all. Royston Bailey says, Voyager episode Survival Instinct, the only one written by Ronald Moore, I believe, explores the desire to be an individual versus a part of a collective or hive. Hey, I agree. We always want to be individuals. That's another thing science fiction frequently addresses, is that the individual stands against all manner of, anything that oppresses the individual. George Lucas, THX 1138. What was that about? The triumph of love and the triumph of individuality. Major Chai Chai is here. Hello, and she's an actual major. So, hello, Major. How are you? We're going to talk about Major Chai Chai has she crocheted some Death Stars, and we're going to auction those off. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Pluribus makes me think, rare for a TV show. After each episode, I think of things that must be lost because everyone is linked. Art, dance, the thrill of discovery of something new, clever, whimsy. 100%. Absolutely. That's another thing. What does a collective like this need with art? It already has. It's all in your head, which is, I can't imagine. Why would the collective want to read a novel when everybody who's still alive and every novel that anyone's ever read is already in your head? It's very interesting. They really need to start exploring the ramifications of this, and I think they will. Tufts 2003 says, Tufts 2003 became an imagination connoisseur. Thank you. Join the tribe. We will have a member call this Saturday. I hope to see you there. DUI Champ says, would it be appropriate to super chat your Fuller interview to ask him about the differences between his vision and plans for Star Trek Discovery, i.e. designs, uniforms, plot versus what we got? I don't think it would be out. No, it's going to be a live show. The problem is I would say I really want to focus on Dust Bunny. That doesn't mean you can't ask him questions, but that's a big question. That would be an entire show. There's now 2 shows that I would love to talk to him about. There is Star Trek Discovery and his version of Crystal Lake, the Friday the 13th TV series. And just like with Discovery, I really wish we got his vision for the show because it is spectacular and we are never going to see it. And I really want to focus on Dust Bunny only because I want to see this movie succeed. I think Brian is an incredible creator, and frankly, I want to see Brian Fuller movies for the rest of my days. And he's got a lot of interesting stuff percolating in that noggin of his, and I want to talk about it. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. Dieter Bastian says, winter's coming. The Snake Plissken jacket is back. Yes, it's cold, but you're right. Everyone loves this jacket. Latino Slant says, R&B, I love you, Vato. I love you too. Paulie, by the way, you should watch his channel and subscribe to it. He's also a very handsome man. So there you go. Go over and subscribe to Latino Slant. The Brew Joe says, my show of the year is Apple TV's Government Cheese. I haven't seen that. Government Cheese. It's warm, surreal, and lightly comical redemption and salvation story about an ex-con in the 60s. Wow. Looking forward to the Fuller interview. Yeah. You know, I it's so funny. I interviewed Brian Fuller about the horror genre 5 years ago during the pandemic. I recently did I made a new thumbnail for it to try and revive views because, you know, basically shows that are old die unless the analytics pick them up again. And I figured it's such an interesting interview. That's why I clipped out a section where we're talking about Stephen King and Clive Barker and threw it up and hope people would find it because he is such an interesting guy. His answers at his Q&A yesterday at USC were phenomenal. Something interesting, though, if I may editorialize for a minute. When I was at USC in the late 80s, if a filmmaker of note came to campus, anybody, it was packed. It was packed. And I would say in the Lucas Building, the beautiful Ray Stark Theater, which wasn't there, this gigantic complex, it wasn't there when I was there, it was maybe half full. And what was really interesting, at the end, it was mostly a female audience. And it was mostly women that went up to talk to Brian Fuller. There were no genre fans. There was one person, an older person, asked about his Trek work. But you would have thought that with his TV pedigree, that there would have been more people, that the whole thing would have been packed. Plus, the movie doesn't open until next week. And the presentation of the theater there was great. And I really appreciated the moderator. I didn't get his name. He's a member of the faculty, but really asked some good questions. So, but Brujo, I got to check this out. The show of the year is Government Cheese. It sounds like a comic I would have read in the 80s. The Robo Producer says, Star Trek Voyager thoughts. I'm rewatching, honestly, better than I remember. Also, free to stream this month. It would be a great end of the year podcast. Yeah, I will be around. We will be able to do that. You know, I'll tell you something. I was not a fan. I love the first season of Voyager. I mean, it wasn't brilliant, but I liked it. But the 47s or the 37s, the first episode with Amelia Earhart and the truck in space, Voyager really, I just didn't like it very much. It got better when 7 of 9 came on. The thing about Voyager, it was wildly inconsistent. And I think that what I really didn't like about Voyager was this idea that they had to try and get home. I think they should have just been stranded in the Delta Quadrant, and we should have seen them trying to take Federation values, not impose them like colonizers on the galaxy, but trying to build a coalition. How do you build? I mean, that area of the galaxy was not doing very well. So how could the Voyager... there's a lot of things in the show that I thought were silly. Like, I understood why they wanted the Maquis and all that, but once you were in that situation, once the Voyager got thrown across the galaxy, the Maquis existed because of a very specific area of space where people's homes were annexed and all that, and they tried to, between the Federation and the Cardassians. But once you got out of that area, there was no reason for the Maquis to be angry with a Starfleet crew. I understand why they tried to do it, but it just didn't really work. Anyway, we could do that. We should try and set it up. I know you've been talking to me about it for a long time. Cyanagiri is here and has been a member for 37 months. 37s. JT Hiskey says, on December 13th, 2023, my closest friend, Care Hansen, passed away. I'm sorry to hear that. I can't believe it's been almost 2 years. She acted as an extra in many projects. I wanted to send this in her honor. Care forever. Well, I'm sorry that you lost your friend. That's a very nice thing to say and to do for her. Here's to Care. Yeah, it's weird when people are just no longer here anymore. Let's see. And I believe I am caught up. So I think I'm caught up with everyone. Yeah, I mean, I guess that since I've gotten... You know what? Let me see. There's a couple of letters that have come in that I haven't read that I can... Because I don't want the show to be totally that short. But let me look and see if I've got a few letters that I haven't read yet. Which I probably do. Like, let's see. Here's one. Let's see. Well, that's yeah. This one I gotta save these. I gotta do a whole viewer letter show. Oh, here's one. This is a good one. This seems appropriate for today. Obviously, Avatar, Fire and Ash, that I'm looking forward to, has been playing. It had its world premiere yesterday. And, it's been mostly getting good notices. But here's one that comes from Aditya Sohani. Aditya, I hope that I'm getting that right. Mr. Burnett, I hope this mail finds you well and hearty. After a superb November with Predator Badlands and Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, December is here with 2 Part 3s, Wake Up Dead Man on Netflix, and Avatar, Fire and Ash on the big screen. And if you'll allow me to be a facsimile of Santa, I present you, the imagination connoisseurs community, with a bag of gifts in the form of sketch posters for James Cameron's Selects, in anticipation of Avatar 3, before I post them on Reddit. They're probably on Reddit now, but I will put in your selects into the live chat so you can click on this link and see his work. There it is in the live chat. After you inspired me to see the 3 Colors trilogy last year, your recent discussion about learning to watch films led me to see Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris for the first time. I love this. Stalker is next on my list for December, and then The Decalogue in January 2026. And I must say, getting used to the pace was a bit tricky at the start, but the intrigue of the story kept me engaged, and once Chris arrives at the Solaris station, the unfolding of events drew me in. The manifestation of memory and the conundrum of living with or letting go of one's love really were thought-provoking and somewhat moving. And that ending, whoa! I found Solaris to be a perfect companion piece to Kubrick's 2001, especially sci-fi cinema from different parts of the world around the same time. If you could share your thoughts on Solaris, I and the viewers would definitely love to hear. And last but not least, a more pertinent question as I take your leave. Can Jimmy C pull a 4Z and cross 2 Billy with Mordor Na'vi? After Titanic and 2 Avatars, can James Cameron do it for a 4th time? Happy Hanukkah and Happy New Year in advance. Aditya Sohani. Great. That's a great question. Well, for those of you who don't know, Solaris is based on Polish science fiction writer Stanislaw Lem's novel of the same name. And at the time, Mosfilm, the Russians, were looking to sort of answer what 2001 did for science fiction with Stanislaw Lem's book, Solaris. And Andrei Tarkovsky, one of the great filmmakers of all time, I think, very different. Now, what I love about this letter is I've often said that people have to learn how to watch movies. And a lot of people I know I get pushback from that. But we, especially now, especially a lot of the people, if you're 30, 35 years old and you haven't had a lot of exposure to world cinema, for instance, you've only been getting really, if you just watch fairly mainstream movies, you're only getting things presented to you in one way. And when you think about it, culturally, there's a lot of different things going on culturally in movies. Bollywood films, when everybody breaks into song, the fact that verisimilitude is not really important when you're looking at Bollywood action cinema, that's just a different way of looking at things. And you have to train yourself to do so. When I started watching Hong Kong triad cinema, I call it triad cinema, I don't know what it's called, Hong Kong crime thrillers, John Woo and Sweetheart and Ringo Lam, and you're watching those films, you know, with the two-handed guns, you have to learn how to sort of settle in to accepting. A lot of people think they're cheesy or they don't get it. You know, you have to learn to take those movies on their own terms. And a lot of people don't know how to do that because they expect every movie to play like an American movie. The pacing, by the way, Solaris is a lot easier to watch than Stalker is. But, you know, there are some filmmakers, especially in foreign countries, that use the image in a different way. They use editorial in a different way. They see things in a different way. They're not used to the Hollywood style of filmmaking. And when you're trying to watch those movies, and if you look at movies from all over the world, Asian movies, I mean, it's interesting to me. It's interesting because I think like Korean films are very accessible to watch, whether they're action movies or thrillers or horror films, because they have a tendency to present themselves in a similar manner to the West. That's why I think a lot of Korean cinema is so easy to watch, and it goes down easy. You still get that Asian perspective, like a Squid Game is looking at things like the haves and have-nots in a different kind of a way, but we still get it. And that's why I love a lot of contemporary Korean cinema. Some countries make more existential cinema where you ruminate on things. The German TV series Dark was a really great science fiction show. If you've never watched Dark, check it out. That approaches things that would be done very differently here. So if you've never watched movies from other places, you need to acclimate. Like I always throw out this challenge, and Major Chai Chai took it, about Antonioni's Ennui trilogy. And the reason I do that is because those movies are very far away from American films. They might be maddening, but I also just love those movies anyway. I love what they have to say and the way they present things. And, you know, I saw them when I was younger and I was perplexed by them. But there was it's a vibe. Those movies are a vibe. And same with another movie I dearly love called last year, Marienbad. It's a vibe. And if you can bring yourself onto that level, it's a good vibe. But a lot of people can't do that. They don't see movies that way. And so I don't mean that. What do you mean? When I was going to do a show about do you know how to watch movies, people were they were already, as the internet here is so wont to do, they were already talking about how pretentious I was being and all that. And I'm like, don't take my word for it. You sit down and try and watch Antonioni's Ennui trilogy. Or if you don't want to watch those, watch another one of his movies. Watch The Passenger. Jack Nicholson is in that. Watch Red Desert. Or if you're, if I love Wim Wenders, one of my favorite movies in the world, is in fact Wings of Desire. I've told everybody, I wrote a paper on it when I was at USC. As a matter of fact, when it just so happened that this class that I was taking at USC, there was I wanted to write a paper about, I have the paper around, I called it The Color of Immortality. And half of Wings of Desire is black and white. That was why I was being cheeky. But it was actually playing. I want to say it was in Santa Monica. So I drove down to Santa Monica to see it in the theater again because it hadn't come out on Laserdisc from Image yet. Image first put it out on Laserdisc. And I went to see the movie, and like half the people walked out. And the first time I saw Wings of Desire, I was blown away by it. And Wings of Desire, Wim Wenders, who made Wings of Desire, he worked with a famous, I want to say he was a German poet. Wings of Desire, they didn't have a script. They had this idea and they were shooting stuff, but it was very freeform, and the voiceover was written later, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff. And Berlin was still a divided city at that time, and I didn't know Dieter Bastian, so I didn't know any Germans that I was fascinated by the portrayal. And then the follow-up, Far Away So Close, took place after the wall fell. So if you look at Wings of Desire, I don't think Far Away So Close is exactly the achievement that Wings of Desire is, but it's still very interesting. So, if you want to get more insight into me and you haven't ever seen Wings of Desire, I would challenge, it is a wonderful, beautiful movie, but you have to settle in. The first hour of that movie is rough to watch if you're not on its wavelength. And that's all I mean about that. So, really interesting. But anyway, I believe that I've caught up on Super Chats and tips. I want to thank you for that. And I will end this show. I don't need to go any further. I've said my piece. I would implore everybody to watch Pluribus. It's a terrific experience. Or maybe it isn't. Some people, again, you kind of have to get on its vibe. You got to get on its wavelength. And some people, it doesn't provide the overt thrills of something that has a bit more action adventure in it. Some people, it might not be their jam, and that's okay. But I'd like to hear from you too if you don't dig it. But anyway, I want everybody. You'll be seeing a lot of me in the month of December, I promise. And also, please join us 6 o'clock this Friday. Brian Fuller is going to be here to talk about his upcoming movie, Dust Bunny, which I truly love. If you love, again, Amelie, if you love dark fairy tales, if you love City of Lost Children and Delicatessen and all of that, French maximalism, that's what I think Brian called it. It's going to be great. He's going to be here, and bring your questions in. Now, and again, I'm sure a lot of people do want to talk about Discovery, but I do want to keep it fairly tight and keep it about Dust Bunny, because I want to see Dust Bunny do well in the theater. Even at my local beloved Harkins Theater here, I looked on the app. It was there, but you couldn't buy tickets for it. You could buy tickets for everything else, but I'm like, why can't you buy tickets to Dust Bunny? I was even going to say, come see Dust Bunny and we'll have a meetup. We'll have a Dust Bunny meetup. But who knows? I don't know. Anyway, that's it for me. I want to thank everybody for generously supporting this channel via Super Chats, tips, and memberships. It goes a long way, more than you know. And, I just want to thank everybody for the continued support they've given me in the wake of losing my sister back in October. I've still received a lot of very nice emails from people, and it, it's not easy. It's still kind of, the whole thing is very strange, but I do want to thank everybody for being very caring and really reaching out. It means a lot. And on that note, I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson and all the moderators here and everybody that keeps coming back, and all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. And as you will all know, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night, and I will see you on the John Campea Show tomorrow. That's it.